Please welcome to the stage Today Show anchor and correspondent at NBC News, Jenna Wolfe, and the Closing the Great Health Divide in the United States panel members, attending cardiologist and director of education and outreach, Ronald Perelman Heart Institute and New York-Presbyterian Hospital, Weill Cornell Medical College, Holly Andersen, MD, founder of the Notah Begay III Foundation, Notah Begay III, President and CEO of the National Council of the Raza, Janet Murguía, California Youth of the Year Boys and Girls Clubs of Capistrano Valley, Rojas, and President and CEO of the California Endowment, Robert K. Ross, MD.
Wow. I'm going to start you guys off with a really funny story, real quick. I just called my parents inside to tell them that that the Clinton Foundation called me and that I'm hosting this incredible Clinton panel, and I'm also doing a boot camp. And my dad, like, before I even finished the sentence, dropped the phone and called my mom from across the house. And he's like, Sheila, did you hear? Jennifer's having dinner with the Clintons, and then she's training them. I was like, So anyway, if anyone runs into my parents, they're in Chappaqua, just go with it. And I didn't have dinner with them, and no, I did not train them, but it was a good story. And you want to talk about parental pride? I was talking to you all about my 4.5-month-old daughter who I have left at home. I left her at home because she didn't understand what a food desert was. And I feel like that's a requisite for being here, but she was all over the map with her understanding. So we are going to talk about this, among other things. I have an incredible panel here, and we are going to sort of tackle this amongst a host of other issues. We have a question that we're going to stream out to everybody that I would like you to think about, and after we get to know everyone, we are going to sort of get answers and have people chime in and tell us what you think. And the question is, and it's sort of an interesting question, approximately how many people in the United States live in food deserts? It's a sad question because look at your options. Your choices are 5 million, 12 million, 24 million, and 40 million. And any of those answers are too many. So before we get to that, I would like to go across and have everyone introduce yourselves. Tell me why you're here, what you enjoy doing in the summer. Well, we'll stick to that after. Why you're here and why it's important that you are here. Let's start with you, Yossi.
My name's Yossymar Rojas. I'm the Pacific Region Youth of the Year for Boys and Girls Clubs of America and a 7-year member. I'm a Boys and Girls Club in Capistrano Valley. And just in preparation for this panel, I looked back at everything the club did for me, and it provided me many opportunities to live a very healthy lifestyle. It provided me with my first opportunity to play on a soccer team, to participate in programs like Triple Play that taught me how to eat healthy, to exercise right. And so it did a lot for me, and exercise kind of just, it pushed me forward to become involved in all these different activities, and in cross country in high school and track and field. And so it also taught me life lessons, and participation in these sports taught me life lessons that are applicable in everyday life. So apart from just leading a healthy lifestyle, it also helped me with learning life lessons that truly have made an impact in my life. So just living a healthy lifestyle has been just amazing.
You speak like you have the experience of a 45-year-old, just so you know. He's like 4, and fantastic. You're 18?
Yes.
Let's just clear that up, because he's not actually 4. I didn't want you to be misinformed. Bob.
Yeah, Bob Ross, California Endowment. I'm a pediatrician by training, grew up in New York City, spent some time in Philadelphia, now a Californian, not too far from here. And our foundation, the California Endowment, focuses on improving the health of underserved, low-income, distressed, marginalized communities. So the topic here today is very important to us. The health divide is extraordinary in this country. We'll talk a little bit more about how that plays out. But I want to emphasize the importance of place as we think about health and community. I want to emphasize the importance of prevention and having a prevention ecosystem. And I want to talk about the importance of power building in communities to determine their own health destiny and their future. And congratulations on your baby, Jenna.
Thank you. You said you're a pediatrician.
Yes.
I have 400 questions for you. Where should I start? Should I alphabetize them? I'll do this after, but just stick with me afterwards, okay? We're gonna.
As long as I can bill you, it's fine.
Okay. And therein lies the problem with healthcare in this country. Just kidding. Good evening, Janet.
Hi, thanks. Janet Murguía. I've privileged to lead the largest Latino civil rights and advocacy organization in the country, the National Council of La Raza. Wow. Have some fans out there. Thank you. NCLR has a 45-year history of impact, and I'm excited to be here today because the opportunity to showcase the needs of the Latino community as we work with other communities of color who disproportionately seem to be left out of healthcare and healthcare systems is really important. And so this is a chance to talk about that, particularly as it relates to Latino. There's an insurance gap. 1 out of 3 Hispanics in this country is without access to insurance. We also want to be able to talk about the well-being gap. A lot of folks don't know the answer to that question about food deserts and the fact that we are promoting healthier foods like fruits and vegetables, and yet we have folks who have the real obstacles to attaining those. And also, I hope to talk a little bit also about the information gap and the real solutions that we're trying to create as we highlight the importance of community-based organizations in reaching our communities and making sure that we're using those cultural assets and trusted partners in the community to get information and to really show you where we've had success in some of those areas. So it's a real privilege for me to be here today with such a distinguished panel.
And moderator, right?
Thank you, yes.
Sometimes people forget us. Dr. Holly Andersen.
I am Dr. Holly Andersen. I'm the Director of Education and Outreach at the Perelman Heart Institute at New York-Presbyterian Hospital. I have the longest title. But I'm also a cardiologist who practices in New York City with a big practice. And it's very exciting to be here with all these minds that are, and energies that are interested in making our country healthier. Heart disease is the #1 cause of death for both men and women in this country and now worldwide. But more women have died from heart disease than men every year in this country since 1984. And once a woman gets diagnosed with heart disease, she will do worse and be more likely to die from it than a man. And at every point along the way, women are treated less aggressively. A woman who has a heart attack in this country today will wait longer before going to an emergency room. She'll be less likely to have the classic symptom of chest pain. She'll be less likely to have a diagnostic electrocardiogram. And not surprisingly, she'll be less likely to be diagnosed correctly. But even if she is diagnosed correctly, she'll be less likely to receive all the life-saving therapies we have to treat heart attacks today. And even if the decision is made to give her these therapies, they will be given on average at a 13-minute time delay compared to a man. And for those of us who treat heart attacks, we have a saying that time is muscle. And even if you control for all of these variables, a woman will still be more likely to die from her heart disease. And it's the youngest women who have the greatest death discrepancy rates compared to the youngest men. And we don't know why. We're working on this through research and enrolling more women in clinical trials of cardiovascular disease. But one of the great things about being a cardiologist is that there's so much you can do to prevent heart disease. And prevention is crucial because all too often, the first symptom of heart disease is sudden death. So we at Perelman Heart Institute feel that it is our responsibility to do more than just provide the best treatment and care for our patients. We feel that it's our responsibility to educate our patients and their families. And we feel it is, and have a commitment and feel it's our responsibility to educate our community because we know that increasing our society's awareness of this disease will save lives. And I have a saying that if you can educate a woman, you can educate a family. And you know, everybody knows that the secret, however, is not just education. It's motivating people to live healthier, to make it personal for them. One highly successful initiative that we have is a faith-based community outreach program where we have trained people to go into congregations and teach them about heart health through scripture. And we've not only just increased their knowledge, we've lowered their blood pressures and made their waistlines smaller. And we are embarking on a new project that's in development that is aimed at increasing awareness, prevention, early detection and treatment for women in heart disease that will reach beyond New York City to other cities and partners, and watch for it.
Fantastic, thank you. Women are also less likely to complain about chest pain. You forgot to mention that part. Sorry, guys on the panel. Notah.
Thanks so much. My name's Notah Begay III. half Navajo, 1/4 San Felipe, 1/4 Isleta Pueblos from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Former professional golfer, played on the PGA Tour for about a dozen years, and golf's been a great game for me. It paid my way to college. I played at Stanford University, where I was lucky enough to graduate with a degree in economics, and have been very blessed by the game. I am currently an analyst for the Golf Channel and for NBC, and still can get out an occasional round and can probably beat most of you in here still. But golf's an interesting game, and being a professional athlete is a blessing. You get to travel all over the world, and by the time I was 26 years old, I was making well over $1 million a year, and coming from a underprivileged background, that was certainly a big achievement for me. And making the transition into nonprofit work and trying to make a difference was a compelling question. And one of the questions that I'm continually asked when I go out and I work with youth on American Indian reservations is, why did you want to make a commitment to Native American communities and nonprofit work? And it has to do with some simple numbers. I mean, Native Americans suffer a rate of type 2 diabetes, the incidence of type 2 diabetes in their communities at 177% higher than the national average. And 1 in 2 kids on an American Indian reservation will contract type 2 diabetes in their lifetime. So if you're in a family and you have 2 kids, one of your 2 kids is going to contract type 2 diabetes. And what makes that more so compelling to me is that it's completely preventable. And I think that's what we're all here for, is trying to implement and understand and create more preventative strategies and measures to address these issues, heighten awareness, increase advocacy. And the compelling question is, how do we do that? But more importantly, how do we do that and keep costs at some sort of reasonable standard? And one of the ways that we've been able to achieve some of the monumental growth and improvements in our communities is through collaboration. And that's a word that's been used here today through many of the panels, and it's just partnering. We've been able to formulate partnerships with Nike, with W.K. Kellogg Foundation, with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and that has helped us to implement more of our resources and some of our experience and understanding into better research, more data collection, what's actually going on out there, and then how can we formulate better ways to address these issues. And the last point that I'd love to make about this issue is, how can we contribute to sustainability? And I think that is the million-dollar question. Is it's one thing to create great programs, have good ideas, and good people behind them. There's a lot of that here today, but how do we make these things sustainable? How do we make them more efficient so that they perform, but keep costs down so that we can pass the good ideas and the improved performance and hopefully the reduction in the incidence of chronic disease in this country at a level where it's cost effective for everybody. So delighted to be here and look forward to spending some more time with Jenna here.
That's what I thought. Thank you, and good night, everybody. Thank you, Notah. The name of the panel, we're talking about closing the great health divide in the United States. That's what the font says behind me. But I think what we're really doing is we're going to touch on a lot of the other panels and sort of recap a little bit about why we're all here. And I think we all had, at least I did, an aha moment where you finally realized, or you first realized, that there is a problem in the United States. For me, I grew up in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. I spent 15 years in the Caribbean, 11 years in Haiti, which, among other lines on its resume, Haiti boasts itself as the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. And when I lived as a child in Haiti, everything good happened in the United States. Good clothes, good music, but good food. I mean, in the United States, you had strawberries all year long. You could get apples whenever you want. You could have something other than cornflakes. We had cornflakes for 8 straight months because they never shipped any other cereal down to Haiti. So I would come up here for a week, I'd walk into a supermarket, and it was like going to Great Adventure. I couldn't even believe there was so much food. So there was just this wealth of resources, and for me, my aha moment was when I realized that wealth of resources did not carry over and spill over to everyone. Everybody should have access to it, and Not everybody did. And for me, when I first knew that, I realized that we have a problem in this country, and we shouldn't have a problem in this country. So if you take a look right now at the poll to see where we're at, most people have 12 million people, 39% say 12 million people in this country live in food deserts. And the unfortunate, should we put up the answer? Because I hate to tell you that the answer is actually 24 million people. And that is an unacceptable number on so many fronts. So in tackling this question, I would also like to pose the question to the panel. What was your moment when you realized we have a problem in this country? And if we don't start today, we are never going to get to the end of even tackling half of this crisis. I will throw it to everybody. You guys settle down. Settle down. Everybody
I'll jump in, but I think I'd like to jump in more with where a solution-oriented opportunity that arose for us as we were working with partners across other communities in the area of healthcare. The Spina Bifida Association approached us, and they asked us for help. And I wasn't sure exactly why they were coming to us, but then they explained that what they were finding is a high incidence of birth defects among Latinas in particular. And one of the reasons that they could identify was the fact that flour companies, and the corn flour company here in the United States, was not enriching the flour with folic acid, which we know is a great help in affecting the reduction of birth defects. Yet they were doing it in Latin America. And what we could find, this was the stunning opportunity, is that if we could convince this manufacturer of putting folic acid, enriching it in their flour, we could actually see a real reduction in the impact in birth defects for Latinas. There's very few opportunities, as we've heard in this conference, about, how do you actually achieve impact and how do you change behavior? But this one action would really help. And so they approached us because it was a flour company based in Latin America and in Mexico, and yet they were selling all their flour here in the U.S., and they wouldn't do it, and they wouldn't respond to the Spina Bifida, so they thought we would go to them. Well, we went to them, and they didn't really respond either. But what we realized, and this is another piece that I think is really important, is that we have to be able to engage partners as we do our work, and the public and private partnerships are really key. And so what we realized is on our corporate board of advisors was Walmart. And Walmart, guess what, buys more flour on behalf of the U.S. than any company. And what we did is we engaged the Walmart company to engage this particular producer of flour. And in one fell swoop, when they came, it took a little bit of time, but not much. But the fact is when Walmart asked them to enrich their flour with folic acid, they responded. And I think for me, what I realized there is that it wasn't so much of, this problem is so dire. What I realized is that some of these problems have solutions. We may not be able to get there on our own, but, the Spina Bifida Association reached out to us, we reached out to Walmart, and all of us reached out to that particular producer of flour, and in that action, we were actually get a change that we can now document, reduce the incident of birth defects for Latinas. Now, that's a pretty important piece to, I think, a story here that hopefully we can all take away. And for me, it is that, we can't do this on our own, but we need to establish partners, and we need to recognize that those folks who can weigh in on our behalf can carry that clout and weight on behalf of others and leverage that in a benefit that we can actually now document. So for me, that's a positive story that I hope people can realize. But we're very appreciative of many of the roles that many of our partners in the private sector, because I can also point to examples where General Mills, ConAgra, and other folks have really stepped in and really used their leverage and their count to help us.
Great. Notah, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I think the most telling thing for me is within a 5-year period, I buried 6 of my relatives all under the age of 65. And 3 of them, of the 6, were under the age of 50. 3 died of heart failure, and the other 3 from diabetes. My mom has diabetes. My grandmother died from diabetes. And that was the one point in my life as an educated person and lucky enough to have traveled the world and have seen some of the great things, not only in our country but in other countries, that something had to be done. And that's sort of the advocacy part that we've established through the NB3 Foundation and trying to work on behalf of not just our communities in New Mexico, our Native communities, but Native communities across the country. And I always felt that the nonprofit model was flawed in a lot of ways, in the sense that I think a lot of nonprofits weren't being rewarded for performing well, and I thought that nonprofits that were performing poorly were being over-rewarded. And so what I've tried to do is to construct our organization to perform more as a for-profit business, in the sense that trying to quantify our performance and measures and our ROIs. How are we spending every dollar, and how can I protect every dollar of investment that's coming in from whether it's a private donor, government-based, or another nonprofit.
And you've seen success with that?
We're seeing some success, and we're starting a new campaign this year. We're going to allocate over the next 2 years approximately $1.5 million into Native communities. And we're trying to address this by creating a sort of a portfolio of programs. So some higher risk, some middle risk, and some on the lower side, to try and get a more thorough assessment of what's going on. Who's doing well, why are they doing well, and how can we find ways to make that better, and then how can we replicate it? And so I think that that's the one thing as Native Americans. I mean, we represent less than 2% of the U.S. population, and in a lot of surveys and polls, we fall in the other category. And we've been in North America for well over 500 years, and in a lot of instances, nobody talks about what's going on in our communities. We have mortality rates that are the lowest of any affected group in the country. We have the highest rates of addiction and health issues and all of those kinds of things. And so we're trying to advocate, but we're trying to do it effectively and not waste people's time or money.
Yes, Dr. Andersen.
When I went to medical school, I did not have one class on sleep, on nutrition, on physical activity, let alone stress reduction. And in the fellowship, I didn't even become aware that heart disease was the #1 cause of death for women until I really became a cardiology fellow and really started looking at the data. But I am a practicing cardiologist, and I do teaching, and I was very frustrated that I was only reaching the people that came to me. And when you look at the obesity numbers of our population, you look at the fact that that death rates due to heart disease is increasing in our youngest adults. And I sit there at our conferences, and we talk about we're very good at treating heart disease. We're very bad at preventing it. It's like mopping up the floor with the faucet wide open. You know, we had one conference where we talked about the 5th drug that should be added on to a medical regimen in somebody with unstable angina, and that was a late-breaking trial. And we don't talk to our young doctors and teach them how to ask about prevention. As Patrick Kennedy said, ask them about questions above the neck up. And I think I think there is this big disconnect between what doctors are doing, what they're trained to be doing, what they're reimbursed to do, because you're not allowed to come talk to me if you don't have a diagnosis. That's slowly changing, but we really need to put an ICD code about what's wrong with you, not hellness. So I think I've devoted part of my career to really trying to, again, close this gap between, and doctors are really well-meaning and nobody has time, but I do think also with the other panel that it's going to be more patient-driven medicine. And we're right, doctors are the worst communications electronically. We're the last people to get on anything. And I think patients are going to drive this in some of these smart apps and tracking your heart rate and blood. You know, you come to get your blood pressure checked with me 4 times a year. You can have it checked continuously with some of these devices, and it's much more real. It's real time what's going on in your body instead of coming in with a white coat syndrome, sitting down and having your blood pressure checked. So there is a hugely fast changing world. And I think doctors are just trying to get caught up in it.
We talked about this inside. Kobe Bryant made a comment the other day that I think really resonated with a lot of people. He was talking about obesity, and he said, kids, they don't want to, they don't want to know that a cookie they eat today is going to affect them 30 years from now. They want to know what could happen today. Are we, we all have problems here. Are we years, months, decades away? I mean, you're starting to see this in the medical community. How far away are we from making a dent into this crisis?
Well, a couple of things. One is we're a long way away, but we're getting better. And a couple of points I want to just to illustrate our resident cardiologist point. A couple just factoids that opened my eyes and our eyes as a foundation. Point number one, the public health research tells us that 75 to 80% of what determines your life expectancy and your health quality of life has nothing to do with medical care, okay? Point number two, if you want to have some statistical likelihood of knowledge of how long your life expectancy is going to be, tell me your zip code, okay? Your zip code matters substantially greater than your genetic code in influencing the quality of our health life. And this goes back to your experience in tribal communities, in Compton and South Los Angeles and Detroit. If you take those of you that are from New York City, if you start on Park Avenue, when you start on 42nd Street and you drive north, and in about 12 minutes, if you catch all the lights, you're going to be in a very different neighborhood than Park Avenue or Fifth Avenue and 42nd Street, okay? You're going to be in East Harlem, okay? And the life expectancy drops dramatically as you go from Park Avenue south to north. The same on this highway without this street here, Highway 111, Palm Springs, great. Palm Desert, great. Rancho Mirage, great. You get on the other side of La Quinta and you get to Thermal at Mecca and Coachella, and that life expectancy drops dramatically. And that's because of the quality of those communities. And I want to add something to the education issue, which is it's also about options and choices. Because the community that you live in, the school that you attend, is going to determine the options you have in front of you, regardless of your education, that you should be eating 5 servings of fresh fruits and vegetables a day. If you live in one of those food deserts, and your kids go to a school where the choices are pizza and cheeseburgers, that's what your kids are going to eat. And so how do we transform the narrative from just education, which is important and critical, but to making sure that we are creating communities where the healthy option is the first option, not the non-existent option or the last option. And we've had that success with tobacco. The tobacco battle is not done, but it wasn't good enough when the Surgeon General in 1964 finally got permission to put the warning label on the side of cigarettes. I said, you know what, these things might not be good for you. It took us another 40 years
It was a long battle.
of parents pushing to say, wait a minute, I don't want this in our schools. We don't want this in the workplace. We don't want this in movie theaters. We don't want this in airports.
And
now you're beginning to see the numbers come down.
Except that it made her job much better.
I was
because
going to
the
say,
cardiologist,
the
she had a
tobacco
ton of
industries,
patients.
and the tobacco industries were sued because they made their products so addictive. And I think that the exact same thing's going on with our food industry. You see, and so we, I think, really have to lobby the makers, okay, of our food products to do better, because every cracker, every piece of cereal, every piece of bread made in this country has more sugar in it than any other country in the world. And we were on this low-fat diet for so long, they made everything taste better by putting more sugar and salt and fat in it. In fact, the perfect snack, have you heard about the perfect snack, was the Cheeto, because it had the bliss factor. You don't even have to chew it. It had the perfect amount of salt and sugar and fat in it. You don't even have to chew it. And so I think until we try to get the manufacturers of our food to make better food, it's going to be very, very hard to make a
It's
difference.
fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah, but Yossi, aren't Cheetos so great? They're like delicious, right? Is that the problem? That's the problem, is they make the food so good, you have a hard time saying no. Real quick, I know we're getting close to the end of time. I'd love you to weigh in. You're a young person. You represent a lot of the young, the young people out there, the young voice out there. Why are you involved in this? Why is this important for you? How do we get other people your age involved so we don't have just, adults talking about this, but we try to start at a much younger level?
Well, just being a member at my Boys and Girls Club, you see such a wide range of kids walk in through those doors. And so it's through programs like Triple Play and just exercising in the gym that you see a lot of these kids, they test for BMI, for body mass index, and you see these scores improve over time. And so I can honestly say that my quality of life is so much better because of my involvement in sports and because of my healthy habits that I developed while at my Boys and Girls Club. And it's definitely improved my life, and it's something that honestly can improve anyone's life. And so I think it's just common sense.
I just wanted to build on that. I think it is getting information to some extent into the hands of families. And for us in the Latino community, one of the great areas where we've had real progress has been with lay health promoters, promotoras de salud. They are trusted individuals within the community who are trained to help work with these families. But, you think that there's this, in our community, tortillas. This is a staple in many of the meals in the Latino community. But originally, and with many families still, they use lard to make those tortillas. And I know when it came to my mom, her goal was to make the perfect tortilla every time. But once she learned and understood that lard might not be the best thing, you start changing recipes. You have these promotoras de salud. I'm using tortillas as one example, but they start to work with the families in these communities. They again are trusted voices, and all of a sudden they're using less lard. They're using or alternatives and substitutes. There are ways where we can engage, but for us in the Latino community, we have to make sure it's not just about translating things in Spanish and hoping people can understand it. It really is using culturally appropriate assets in the community and strategies so that we can better connect into these families, because we can actually get them to change something that has been proven to be very hard, is this habits and the way that they have done things traditionally, but hopefully it's in a way where it makes them better and people understand that the result is not maybe the perfect tortilla, but it's healthier for their families.
24 million people in this country live in food deserts. There's something like, 300 million people living right now in this country. That's like 8% of our population. That is unacceptable. That is unacceptable. So I think, as you pointed out, Janet, it's small solutions. It's not, here's how we're going to fix the problem, good luck and be gone. It's what can we do today, tomorrow, to try to make a dent in this. We are out of time, but I wanted to thank you guys so much. You were talking way too much. If you could, next time you're on a panel, just settle down a little bit. And then it goes in order this way of the... thank you for caring. Thank you for participating. Thank you guys for coming. This is a conversation that can't just happen one day out of the year. It needs to happen over the course of the entire year, because it's through educating people here, people at home, people tuning in to watch us, that we are going to make any progress at all in closing the health disparities in this country. Thank you very much for your time.